ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. So this is my third video on metaphysics of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi, and the topic is mind control. See, people, they have complete misunderstanding and misconceptions about mind. Actually speaking, mind does not exist at all. It is non-existent in the real sense. But people, they talk about mind control, how it can be controlled. Books are written, many books are written. So there is no mind at all, because mind is nothing but series or chain of thoughts arising from Atma. So if these thoughts are ceased, there is no mind. That means mind is a non-existent entity. Same case, ego, because ego is the modification of mind. So both mind and ego, they are non-existent. So now let us see what Maharshi says about this. Devotee asks, how can I control the mind? Maharshi, there is no mind to control if the self is realized. The self shines forth when the mind vanishes. In the realized man, the mind may be active or inactive, the self alone exists. 4. The mind, body, and world are not separate from the self, and they cannot remain apart from the self. Can they be other than the self? When aware of the self, why should one worry about these shadows? How do they affect the self? Devotee, if the mind is merely a shadow, how then is one to know the self? Mercy, the self is the heart, self-luminous. Illumination arises from the heart and reaches the brain, which is the seat of the mind. The world is seen with the mind, so you see the world by the reflected light of the self. The world is perceived by an act of the mind. When the mind is illumined, it is aware of the world. When it is not so illumined, it is not aware of the world. See, mind does not have any power of its own. Mind is receiving power from the self. So whatever illumination is there by the mind, it is all the reflected luminosity from the self. Because mind receives the power from self. So whatever reflection is there, that is all from the self through mind. If the mind is turned in toward the source of illumination, objective knowledge ceases and the self alone shines as the heart. The moon shines by reflecting the light of the sun. When the sun has set, the moon is useful for displaying objects. When the sun has risen, no one needs the moon, though its disk is visible in the sky. So it is with the mind and the heart. The mind is made useful by its reflected light. It is used for seeing objects. When turned inwards, it merges into the source of illumination, which shines by itself, and the mind is then like the moon in the daytime. When it is dark, a lamp is necessary to give light, but when the sun has arisen, there is no need for the lamp. The objects are visible, and to see the sun, no lamp is necessary. It is enough if you turn your eyes toward the self-luminous sun. Similarly, with the mind to see the objects, the light reflected from the mind is necessary. To see the heart, it is enough that the mind is turned towards it. Then the mind does not count and the heart is self-effulgent. Next question by the devotee to Maharishi. After leaving this ashram in October, I was aware of the presence that prevails in Sri Bhagwan's presence enfolding me for about 10 days. All the time, while busy in my work, there was an undercurrent of that peace in unity. It was almost like the dual consciousness which one experiences while asleep in a dull lecture. Then it faded out entirely, and the old stupidities came in instead. Work leaves no time for separate meditation. Is it enough constantly reminding oneself I am while at work? Devotee, is a set meditation necessary for strengthening the mind? Mercy, not if you keep the idea always before you that it is not your work. At first, effort is needed to remind yourself of it, but later on it becomes natural and continuous. The work will go on of its own accord and your peace will remain undisturbed. Meditation is your true nature. You call it meditation now because there are other thoughts distracting you. When these thoughts are dispelled, you remain alone. That is in the state of meditation, free from thoughts, and that is your real nature, which you are now trying to gain by keeping away other thoughts. Such keeping away of other thoughts is now called meditation. But when the practice becomes firm, the real nature shows itself as a true meditation. Devotee, other thoughts arise more forcibly when one attempts meditation. Maharshi, yes, all kinds of thoughts arise in meditation. That is only right, for what lies hidden in you is brought out. Unless it rises up, how can it be destroyed? Thoughts rise up spontaneously, as it were, but only to be extinguished in due course, thus strengthening the mind. Devotee, there are times when persons and things take a vague, almost a transparent form, as in a dream. One ceases to observe them as outside but is passively conscious of their existence, while not actively conscious of any kind of selfhood. There is a deep quietness in the mind. Is it at such time that one is ready to dive into the self, or is this condition unhealthy, the result of self-hypnotism? Should it be encouraged as yielding temporary peace? Maharshi replies, there is consciousness along with quietness in the mind. This is exactly the state to be aimed at. The fact that the question has been framed on this point without realizing that it is the self shows that the state is not steady but casual. The word diving is appropriate when there are outgoing tendencies and when therefore the mind has to be directed and turned within. There is a dip below the surface of externalities, but when quietness prevails without obstructing the consciousness, where is the need to dive? If that state has not been realized as the self, the effort to do so may be called diving. In this sense, the state may be said to be suitable for realization or diving. Thus, the last two questions you have put do not arise. Devotee, the mind continues to feel partial towards children, possibly because the form of a child is often used to personify the ideal. How can this preference be outgrown? Mercy, hold on to the self. Why think of children and of your reactions toward them? Devotee, this is third visit to Trivannamalai seems to have intensified the sense of egoism in me and made meditation less easy. Is this an unimportant passing phase or a sign that I should avoid such places hereafter? Mercy, it is imaginary. This place or another is within you. Such imaginations must end. For places as such have nothing to do with the activities of the mind. Also, your surroundings are not merely a matter of your individual choice. They are there as a matter of course, and you should rise above them and not get yourself entran- entangled in them. A boy of 8.5 years sat in the hall at about 5 in the evening when Sri Bhagwan went up the hill. During his absence, the boy spoke on yoga and Vedanta in pure, simple, and literary Tamil, quoting freely from the sayings of saints and sacred scripture. When Sri Bhagwan entered the hall after nearly 3/4 of an hour, only silence prevailed. For the 20 minutes the boy sat in Sri Bhagwan's presence, he spoke not a word but was merely gazing at him. Then tears flowed from his eyes. He wiped them with his left hand and soon after left the place, saying that he still awaits self-realization. Devotee, how should we explain the extraordinary characteristics of the boy? Mercy, the characteristics of his last birth are strong in him. But however strong they may be, they do not manifest themselves save in a calm, still mind. It is within the experience of all that attempts to revive memory sometimes fail while something flashes into the mind when it is calm and quiet. Devotee, how can the rebellious mind be made calm and tranquil? Mercy, either see its source so that it may disappear or surrender yourself so that it may be struck down. Self surrender is the same as self knowledge, and either of them necessarily implies self control. The ego submits to only when it recognizes the higher power. Devotee, how can I escape from samsara? Which seems to be the real cause for making the mind restless. Is not renunciation an effective means to realize tranquility of mind? Maharshi, samsara is only in your mind. The world does not speak out saying, "Here I am, the world." If it did so, it would be ever there, making its presence felt by you even in your sleep. Since, however, it is not there in sleep, it is impermanent. Being impermanent, it lacks substance. Having no reality apart from the self, it is called subdued by the self. The self alone is permanent. Renunciation is the non identification of the self with the non self. When the ignorance which identifies the self with non-self is removed, not self ceases to exist, and that is true renunciation. Devotee, can we not perform actions without attachment even in the absence of such renunciation? Maharishi, an Atma Jnani alone can be a good karma yogi. Devotee, does Bhagwan condemn Dvaita philosophy? Mercy, Dvaita can subsist only when you identify the self with the non-self. Advaita is non-identification. So, dear friends, you should be very careful about understanding various terms because sometimes we are completely under ignorance and we start talking about controlling mind and all because mind does not exist when it does not exist there is no question of controlling. Controlling something non-existence is a very funny idea. So, dear friends, just it is not controlling the mind. The actual term should be changing the direction of the mind. Instead of letting the mind move outward, it must be directed to move inward. That is the actual term, not controlling the mind. So, see, spirituality, we have to understand the things clearly. Without understanding, we just carry on talking, discussing, and contemplating on wrong ideas. So we are not at all advantaged. So always understand the subtle terms in a very, very careful way so that we may be benefited and our time is not wasted. Just we, you study books on mind control. What you are doing? You are wasting your time. So thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and comment and subscribe my channel. Thank you my dear friend. Next video I will give on Bhakti and Jnana. Thank you my dear friend. Thank you a lot.